Secretary of State Antony Blinken testifying before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. He's been facing lots of questions from both Democrats and Republicans, facing criticism from both parties, but also some defense from the Democratic side. For more on all of this, let's bring in ABC News political director Rick Klein and Mick Mulroy, ABC News national security and defense analyst. Thank you both for being here. Rick, I want to start with you. Democratic Chairman Senator Bob Menendez was one of those Democrats who's pretty critical of the administration today. He says doing the right thing in the wrong way can end up being the wrong thing, saying there has to be accountability. So how important is this politically to hear members of their own party essentially telling the Biden administration it's time to accept responsibility for this?
Yeah, I do think this is a different tone or tenor that we've heard from the House hearing yesterday. Several of these senators up for re-election, some of them in difficult races, are anticipating the political challenges ahead. And frankly, it's hard for them to stomach what they saw over the last couple of weeks. And it's hard for them to flatly accept the contention by the administration that there essentially was no choice or that this was the only choice. It doesn't square with the realities. And as you see the details get filled in and as you see an attempt at providing the nuance and the full context of the decision making, you still see frustration from Democratic senators and, of course, from Republicans about how this was handled, about how a deadline that had shifted once under direction of President Biden couldn't have been shifted further. You saw Senator Romney a few moments ago talking about that in particular, say, look, if we're going to move the deadline, why couldn't we have done more to make sure that we got our assets out? Of course, it's a difficult situation. Secretary Blinken trying to make the point that you would have put other U.S. interests in jeopardy, maybe restarted the tax on U.S. troops, but some flat assurances today that once again we have to worry about the cooperation of the Taliban tells you what kind of situation we're in. And you're right, Diane, that the full politics of this are still being felt, that there's so much of a blow to America's credibility, is potentially also national security on the line.
And Mick, on the other side of the aisle, Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson also pressed Secretary Blinken on the vetting that's taken place for the Afghan refugees that were evacuated. Has the Biden administration been clear on what checks are in place right now?
So I do think it's fair, as Secretary Blinken pointed out, that the SIV system itself was in serious disarray and was not very effective at the time that they came into office. That said, I do believe the SIV system does provide for accurate and adequate background checks. It takes an extensive period of time to get through it. I know it because I have personally watched some of my former Afghan partners go through it. And I do think that ultimately we will end up with the people that we want in our country. It is not a perfect system. It is going to take a while. And I think it's more of the delay that people are going to be frustrated with. But that delay actually should give people confidence that they are doing the needed checks to ensure that the people coming in should be coming in.
And Rick, looking ahead, the future of Afghanistan as a potential hub for the resurgence of terrorist groups like al-Qaeda and ISIS has been a predominant theme in the questions that we're hearing posed to Blinken today. So what expectations does the United States have of the Taliban right now? What's the administration in terms of that? What's the administration saying in terms of how they ensure that this doesn't happen?
Yeah, frankly, Diane, I found that some of the most striking parts of the admissions from Secretary Blinken over the last 2 days of testimony, that he knows that there isn't a lot of reason to trust the Taliban. There's a lot of disappointment already in how the Taliban has conducted itself in putting together a government. I think we heard Secretary Blinken today laying out why it's in the Taliban's interest to try to cooperate with the United States, why they want acceptance and need acceptance in the world community, what the carrots and sticks that are available to the U.S. and its partners in trying to get the Taliban into a community of nations that would cooperate in defeating terrorism and also allowing U.S. citizens and Afghan allies out of the country. But these are the folks that were fighting us for 20 years, and there isn't a reservoir of trust or goodwill that's been built up. You saw Secretary Blinken with a lot of frustration over the fact that they had engaged on terms with the United States that were favorable enough for the Taliban to get more of a toehold. Obviously, the intelligence was wrong about how strong they were and how quickly the Afghan army would collapse. All of it adds up to a situation where we're relying on inherently unreliable partners. And I think the administration's actually been pretty upfront about that.
And Mick, what do you think? Are those carrots and sticks enough? Is it enough to say that it's in the Taliban's best interest to work with the U.S. and not harbor terrorists?
No, I mean, it could be in their best interest. I think that's a fair point to say, as Rick pointed out, it is, but they don't necessarily care about what we think is in their best interest. They've already appointed people to their senior-most positions that we've designated as terrorists because they're terrorists. They are very closely aligned with al-Qaeda. They actually run the Haqqani network, which was responsible for a large portion of the casualties we took in Afghanistan. I think that not only are they an unreliable partner, they're simply not a partner. They have proven their willingness almost immediately to crush human rights, particularly women's rights in Afghanistan. And I think the further we get away from being there, the worse they're going to get, unfortunately. It is already a haven for terrorists. The deputy director of the CIA today publicly that the al-Qaeda diaspora, if you will, the worldwide members are going back to Afghanistan. So this is going to be and already is a haven for terrorism. I just hope that they don't have the ability to project external attacks against the United States and other areas of the world. That is to be determined.
And Mick, I also wanted to get your take on something Rick pointed out when Senator Mitt Romney pushed back on Blinken's repeated assertion that they inherited the withdrawal deadline from the Trump administration. Romney said that that's not true because the deadline set by the Trump administration was May 1st, and the one set by the Biden administration was August 31st. So to Romney's point, if they could push that deadline from May to August, why not push it later so we have time to get everyone out?
Exactly, and I think that's a fair point. We already changed the date unilaterally, but also the Taliban broke the agreement over and over and over again. They were taking the country back by force. They're already committing atrocious human rights violations. We could have simply said we are going to leave when we get all of the American citizens out and we get all of our partners out. And until then, we're going to maintain control of the region around Kabul. We're going to keep our air component in Bagram Air Base, and then when we're all done, then we will withdraw. And the last withdrawal would be our military from Bagram Air Base. It's hindsight's 2020. I will acknowledge that, but I simply think that would have been the most effective way to do this, and we could have simply done it by force if necessarily. We, as Rick points out, and I think everybody that listening knows, we fought the Taliban for the last 20 years. It wasn't al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda departed almost immediately when the first teams arrived. Al-Qaeda is the problem, but the Taliban was our enemy, and they view us as their enemy, and they always will.
And Rick, we've heard a lot of blame on the Trump administration throughout a lot of these press conferences and even yesterday in the House hearing. But today, we heard Senator Menendez also mention successive administrations lying about the staying power of the Afghan government, saying the whole surrender deal was built on a bed of lies. So how far back does this blame go, and how much does that matter politically at this point?
Well, I think in a lot of ways it's been fitting that we just passed the 20th anniversary of 9/11 because, of course, it was the 9/11 attacks that started the U.S. troop presence in Afghanistan. And I would think that the misleading statements probably started shortly thereafter. The rosier assessments that necessary. We saw Chairman Menendez talk about the diversion of resources into Iraq, which had nothing to do with 9/11. Again, with the benefit of hindsight, that as Mick points out, is always 2020. To recognize that you've got 4 successive presidents who have presided over this war. They've all at some level wanted to end it, end the U.S. troop presence. And whether it was mistakes, whether it was misleading statements, maybe it was just errors in judgment, all of it adds up to the situation that Biden did inherit and the decision that he made. And that, I think, is the critical point that the Biden administration, the president, have been trying to make, is that they came in with a whole lot of baggage. And whether it's deadlines and previous decisions and misleading statements, the erosion of public trust, the waste of resources in terms of human lives lost, as well as taxpayer dollars. All of it is part of what's bought in and that President Biden had to take care of. And his decision that's end this is going to, even though it's not going to be pretty, it has to be done, is his decision. And we've talked a lot about accountability these last couple of days. This goes down as his decision. It happened under his watch, whatever problems and issues he inherited from his predecessors.
All right. Rick Klein, Mick Mulroy, we appreciate your time both today. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.